Are you do you not have that fear, or is that just do you just disconnect? You like that free soloist, just no fear whatsoever?
I think because I've been so lucky and I've not had that huge, knocked back, I'm kind of think, well, it'll never happen.
Yeah.
So thanks for just making me think about that because now I'm worried about the next step.
Lee, can you just tell us a bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm Lee Crosley. I like to describe myself as writing music that's bug free and software that sounds good. So effectively, I'm a wannabe musician and I'm a computer scientist and engineer at heart.
Cool. So first things first, I've had a cheeky stalk of your LinkedIn profile, and you look about 23, 24, and yet you've done so much in your career. It's intimidating. Your LinkedIn profile is intimidating, to be fair.
That's nice of you to say. I mean, I am 35, so
Reals.
appearances are deceptive.
How have you done so much, but you look so young? How you'd assume you'd be haggard from all the stress. You've had pretty senior roles.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a little Zoom filter going on, but it is a case of I get bored really easy. I like excitement. I like to move between things. I like to do new adventures, new challenges on a regular basis. So it probably looks like I've done a lot of things, which I kind of have. It doesn't necessarily say how well I've done them.
You must have done well to be where you are now. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please, Lee?
Yeah, so obviously I'm a computer scientist and engineer at heart. I play a little bit of music every now and again. You might notice there's a few kind of props behind me that I do actually play. But yeah, I've had obviously computer science degree from Lancaster University, but I've kind of just moved from different role to different role over the years, and that's from permanent jobs to contracting, consulting, to startups, to large consultancy practices, and sort of learned lots of different things along the way. Worked with some really great people, and I just love surrounding myself with smart people that are problem solvers that want to get involved, have the can-do attitude, and just come up with great things with them. And then as soon as we've done something great, I'll find whatever that new great thing is to do.
Cool. Tell us about because your career is long. Again, I'm surprised that you're 35. While you were at school, because I just really want to know, what did you want to do when you were at school before university? Before you chose computer science, what were you interested in? What did you want to be?
So it's interesting you say I chose computer science. I actually didn't choose computer
Didn't?
science
What did I
as a
do?
degree. It was maths and music that I applied to Lancaster University for.
Okay.
And then I went to go enroll on my courses, as you do. Sat down and they said, right, so you're enrolled on maths. You need to go over there to enroll on music. So I went over to enroll in music. Oh, you can't have maths and music. We run those two courses at the same time because nobody does those two things together. But you've literally accepted me to do those two things. What am I supposed to do? And said, oh, just pick a different subject. You've got the grades. It'll be all right. So here's
What?
me thinking, right, what can I do then? Well, I'm quite good at computers. I've been doing a fair bit of it at school, got myself into a little bit of trouble at school, messing around and playing with things. So, that's a bit of interest to me. Let's go for that. And then in my first year, smashed it out of the park with computer science and didn't do quite so well in maths. So switched major and here I am.
So it was literally an off-the-cuff choice, and
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
I would have loved to have done a full-time music degree, but at the time I was thinking, what would my parents say right now?
That is impressive. So how did you find doing? I've not done a degree. I've never been to university. How did you find computer science and maths? Because they're both quite challenging subjects, though.
Yeah, they were. And if I'm totally honest, I've learned a lot more since I left university than I did at university itself. When I was working at university, it was almost like, I need to read this thing. I need to do this thing. I need to kind of pretend I understand this, but it doesn't really result in anything. Yeah, you can do an exercise at the end of it, but I wasn't really learning anything. And I already had quite a lot of the kind of base knowledge. So it was almost like going through the motions and it wasn't really overly exciting. It was only when I started doing kind of extracurricular activities in university that I actually got a little bit more engaged. So one of my first businesses was while I was at university that helped me kind of pay for my university fees. And, applying some of the technology that I'd kind of been playing around with and applying it to the real world and to real business And that's what excited me, and that made me, spend my weekends want to work on that and not on potentially coursework and things.
So you started a company. Well, we're going to spend hours talking. I'm so sorry. You started a company in university to help you get through. What was the business?
Oof, right. Okay, we're going back there. So, my sister was, she wanted to be a singer, like all little sisters wanted to be at that time.
Yep.
And she knew that, I liked my music. So she'd asked me to record backing tracks for her all the time. So I'd get the keyboard out, or get my guitar out and synthesize some drums. I'd do it in my uni room and I would send it to her. And then I thought, actually, you know what? I could do this for other people, because custom backing tracks like that there's people are paying, £80 and things for that. So I thought, right, okay, backingmusic.com. I'll grab that domain. Back in the day, every domain was available. You don't have that kind of privilege today.
Yeah.
And just set up a super simple website, put the tracks that I'd done on it, it was a small catalog, and started selling them. It also brought in my computer science element, because I started to do instant downloads. So you paid via PayPal and you got the MP3 download instantly, which in sort of 2003, 2004 was actually pretty cool. There's not many people that were doing instant MP3 downloads.
So
then someone came along and kind of said, by the way, you need to pay royalties for this kind of stuff. So went off on a whole kind of tangent of PRS and licensing and making sure the right people got paid. But effectively, it started a business that became quite successful, started outsourcing the backing tracks to other people in Argentina and other countries, and effectively sold the whole catalogue just as I was leaving uni.
how much, can I ask, how much did you sell it for? You don't have to say.
I don't really, so I didn't sell the company, and I actually still own the domain name. I just sold all of the backing tracks and the rights to it to a competitor.
Okay, cool. So what did you, just out of curiosity, what did you build that website with? Can you remember? It's a long time ago.
Yeah, it was. So, I don't really want to admit it, but it was PHP, MySQL, and the integration was with PayPal, and it was just buy it now buttons. I don't think there's anything more sophisticated than that. But we weren't doing PHP at uni. This wasn't something that I was using as part of my course. It was something that I'd kind of gone, actually, this looks like a better way to do it than the kind of Java that we're learning in class at the minute. And in fact, there's a bit more practical application here. So I was kind of teaching a little bit myself, but based on, a few years of understanding of maybe what the best practices are. Programming languages, there's several that, I have at my disposal now. PHP probably isn't the top one, but it does have its place, and it is a great place to start to learn.
Do you find that, so while you were doing university, I'm trying to stay away from bootcamp versus university, because that's a completely separate tangent to go off on. But did you find that what you were learning in university, were you past your first year at this point when you started this little venture?
I think it was towards the end of my first year, actually. Yeah, so it was sort of 2004 it'll be.
Okay, so how confident were you then as a developer learning to build something on your own, like you do in the real world?
You know what? I didn't really think about it. So obviously today we have a lot of rigor and quality governance and things around the solutions that we deploy. And, we have full integration tests and various other tools at our disposal. Yeah. I think I was just editing the files on the server at that point. It was very kind of ad hoc. Let's just get something working. Oh, I've pressed the button. It looks like it works.
The best
Someone
way.
will tell me if it doesn't further down the line. So, yeah, obviously I know a little better than that now, I hope, but it's a good way to learn and to see how the problems kind of manifest and materialize. My view is that you've not really learned something until you go out and do it and apply it.
Yes.
You can understand how something kind of works or have that knowledge, but you've not really learned until you've done it and you've kind of gone, yep, that worked, or that didn't work. That's another way to learn.
So you finished your university degree. Did you know, at the time you finished, did you know what you wanted to move on to?
I don't really remember the decision that I made at the time. I knew I had to get a job. So that was kind of criteria one. I can't go off and kind of do my own thing straight away. I probably need to, do what everybody else is doing and apply for something. So I applied for a web development job, sat down, and this is before I got all my grades and results and things. And they said, what do you want? So how much money do you think you should be on? And I remember that question, and I have absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
And I just said a figure, and they just went, "Yep, that sounds reasonable and in line with our expectations," which means that I definitely did not get enough money.
So the first company that you worked at, you were a web developer. So what were you primarily working with?
So I was building a CMS for a large utilities provider, which was kind of the main job that I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
And the idea was that we would reskin it for other utility providers and other. Cool. So basically, a reskinned CMS.
Yeah.
And we've all been there. Anybody that kind of started out in web the same kind of time as me kind of has built a CMS or worked on a CMS. Yeah. It's not necessarily the right way to go today. There's the fad of static site generators and things now, and maybe you shouldn't be building CMSs where all of your logic is done in, let's say, SQL Server, which this one was, and you're returning XML from the database. Maybe that isn't the right way to go these days, but that's what we were building. And I just kind of saw myself as, after that first release, well, I don't want to do this same thing for 10 more times. The company that I work for obviously want to do that, and they want to accelerate that development. I want to go off and learn something new and build something else. And if that company doesn't have that kind of work in, then I'll go do that thing. So that's kind of my mindset of wanting to switch.
So you're obviously quite naturally an explorer for you to go and start your own thing. You're obviously curious on your own. Did you find that part of your personality was coming up while you were working on this project, or were you given tickets and it was just your job to do those tickets? Did you have any influence in the product itself?
It started out as I was given tickets and I was shown how to do them because there was a few bits of tech in there. I think it was C# at the time, and I think that was probably my first C# project. So there was a bit of kind of learning and mentoring and things. But then once I kind of got into the swing of it, it was okay. There was a few things like, we need to make it multi-language, which was an interesting requirement. And even as an inexperienced kind of web developer, I think the customer's not asked for it. Mm-hmm. And, the lead developer says at the time, yeah, but it'll be way easier to put it in now. And we're kind of future-proofing. Yeah. And obviously, I think if he looks back on that today, he'll probably say, you know what, don't future-proof. Yeah. They're never going to need it. They're never going to ask for it. It was only half implemented anyway. And, we wasted so much time putting multi-language labels in for everything everywhere. Yeah. So I think there was a few kind of things that I did spot, but I wasn't really influencing the product roadmap. I was pretty junior at that.
So you moved on to different companies, building various products as a web developer.
Yes.
How were you enjoying this? And also, were you ever experiencing any moments of self-doubt? Because you'd done a degree. I assume, I can only imagine this, that after you've done a degree, I feel like you'd be really confident because you should know the theory of everything. Did you ever have any doubts? Did you ever feel uncomfortable while you were working?
I wouldn't say I ever felt uncomfortable, but I don't think it's really my degree that kind of backed up the belief in myself. It's that constant learning. So the fact that if I knew I was doing something, I would read up about it, I'd get involved in it, I'd understand it and kind of prepare myself. So I'm not the kind of person to sit back and just say, oh, you know what, I know I'm doing that thing tomorrow. I'll worry about it when I wake up and start doing it tomorrow. I'll be thinking, what can I do to kind of get ahead on it? Or are there any challenges I'm going to face tomorrow? And by doing that, I kind of excite myself for the challenge tomorrow. Yeah. I get myself into a position where I'm really ready to do that thing, end up getting up early probably to go do it and get a better result on the back of it. Obviously, I get stuck. There's been several programming challenges in my life, which we'll probably come on to if we're going through my history. That I've been stuck with. One where I've actually had to fly to Taiwan to do something on some hardware that I was told couldn't be done, and we'd committed to it to a customer, and I was on a one-way ticket and not coming back until it was resolved. So
that's so cool. That's so cool.
Oh, it's cool, but yeah, I've been stuck and definitely intimidated. In a room full of Chinese engineers, and they're all looking to me for the answer. That's
how did you deal with that?
Pressure in that.
Were you not? I'd be a wreck. I wouldn't know what to say. I think I'd just panic and crumble.
Yeah, I didn't do it in the first day, put it that way. I think I was there a week.
Were you? That's cool. I bet that was one hell of a sense of relief, though, after finishing that. Okay, so you've done these jobs. What did you move on to? Because you've gone quite high, haven't you? You've worked your way up. So where did you
Yeah,
go?
so I went contracting.
Hmm.
I realised that actually the permanent job market wasn't probably the right thing for me. It gave me a solid basis, but I like those, 3 week projects here, 6 month projects here, switching around and working with lots of different people.
What?
I think I quickly realised that working with lots of different people is the best way to do it. Always try and work with someone smarter than you, and you just feed off them. And in fact, they start to realise that there are things that they don't know that you're kind of contributing to. And as soon as you get into that working relationship and you're both feeding off each other, you come up with some great stuff. Never try and work in isolation. Always try and work in a group of, equally motivated or like-minded people.
Were
So
you
I went to,
sorry? Were you having these thoughts at that time? Because they're quite mature thoughts. Were you when you were in the role and you were sort of feeling this lull or this lack of creative spark? I don't know what to call it. Were you
I
aware of
just
that?
wanted
Was it
fun.
natural?
I chased the fun. I think that's the way
Oh,
to put it.
yeah,
Chasing what I wanted to do. I never did something because I thought it paid more at this point. I
yeah.
was always doing something that I wanted to do or I thought was, good for my career, good to remain relevant, good to be exciting, some new technologies, to boost my confidence to the point that you were talking about before.
Yeah,
That's kind of what I was thinking, maybe a little subconsciously.
yeah.
But yeah, so contracting was the obvious choice, and let's do some contracts for a number of years.
So how did you get on with finding those contracts? Was this means you were self-employed? Is that right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah. So how did you go about? That's a big move.
yeah.
You made it sound so small. How did you go into contracting? How did you find your first roles? How did you manage your time and manage the client? And there's so many things you have to think about when you're contracting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, it was a while ago now. I think it was 2010, my first contract, when I decided to make the leap to find a contract. And I found something that matched my skill set.
Yeah.
And it was via a recruiter at the time. I think, yeah, it was definitely via a recruiter. And it was all the way down in Cambridge for Cambridge assessment. And it was building something that was the online GCSE portal and be able to do that. So I thought, oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
And it's using something called XSLT, not something I'll admit to using very often, and a few other technologies. And I thought, actually, that's perfect match for my skill set. At the moment, I'm living in the Lake District. Now, if you look at where Cambridge and the Lake District are, and this is 5 days on site, I'm thinking, but it is a really good fit. So anyway, thought 3-month contract, let's do it. I drove to Cambridge every single week, down on the Sunday, came back on the Friday night, and did it for 3 months. And I absolutely loved the work, did not enjoy the drive. And I think I went through 2 old cars as well on a number of miles down and back.
Yeah.
I think I broke down twice on the way back and lost my weekend. But I absolutely loved it, and it got me into contracting. I've got that then reputation. I've kind of done that. They actually extended me. I ended up staying there for 7 months.
Wow.
And then, I got into the point of life where you meet a girl. The girl's in a particular location. So me and my wife now, we were living in Manchester at the time. So I said, right, I tell you what, I'll have a look for contracts in Manchester, shall I? So we can kind of see each other a bit. And that leap into contracting at that point was it was much easier because I'd already had this kind of reference, the case studies, people were endorsing me from the last role. So moving into I went to work for NICE actually in Manchester, which was a healthcare setting and another super exciting project as well.
But how did you manage? You were working on your own. You didn't bring in anybody else to help you with these projects that you're working on, especially during those first few contracts. Is that right?
Not at that point. There was a little period after that where I started to do some work for organisations via government portals and frameworks like G-Cloud, where there was actually 2 or 3 of us that were kind of involved, and we did start grouping together. That was slightly after that point. But yeah, it was I think Umbrella Company that I used first for my first contract. So to keep things simple rather than having to worry about everything from a sort of paying an accountant perspective, etc. So just using the sort of umbrella company made things easier. Mm-hmm. But then I realised that, hang on, there's actually if you put in the effort and you want to hire other people and things in the future, limited company is obviously the way to go.
Yeah.
So that's how that happens. I had a little bit of a lull after that, I think, kind of wanting to do things that didn't necessarily exist. So, looking for contracts that I wanted to do and kind of waiting for them to come along.
Yeah.
So I was doing sort of short-term engagements, did a little bit of work at McCann, NHS Digital, this kind of little filler projects, but they weren't really what I wanted to do. And then, if we're going through my CV, the next thing was probably my first kind of proper startup that came along that I had an opportunity for, which was called Prescience.
Yep. Just 2 seconds first. So going back to those first few contracts, what were they full stack projects that you were working on when you were working on your own, or were you doing the design for it as well, or were you given the designs?
That's a good question actually. If I think back to Cambridge Assessment, it was using Node, so actually it was very JavaScript and kind of front end and back end, and there was some XSLT in there for some transforming some XML into HTML.
Yeah.
So it kind of was full stack, but it was a very kind of limited full stack. When I moved into to NICE, it was all C# backend. It was actually an in-house kind of grown MVC, because MVC was fairly new at the time, and there was a few kind of niche tech choices that had been made at NICE. So it was kind of getting to grips with those and learning and understanding those. But yeah, the front end as well, we're kind of expected to see features through end to end, and that's kind of how it was positioned.
Yeah.
We were given designs for some things. If it was small features, we were kind of expected to just kind of take what was there.
Yeah.
But the sort of bigger project that I did at NICE was the BNF application, the mobile application, which was the sort of first time that drug interactions and monographs had been presented on a tablet or an iPhone. And I didn't really think about how big a thing it was at the time. It was a project that I was leading. There wasn't really many other developers on the project, but there were designers, there were clinicians and people QAing and verifying the work. But we kind of I fell into that project and just kind of went full steam ahead, and ended up releasing something which was so fantastic that my wife's granddad, actually at the time, he was being treated for something. They pulled out the BNF app, and he said, "Is that the BNF app?" Because do you know that my like grandson-in-law or whatever is got something to do with that? And they went, "Oh, it's brilliant! It's like the best thing ever. We don't have to carry around those big books and stuff anymore." And that just absolutely made him. And obviously, my wife loves me for that as well.
How did you cope with learning? Because you must have had to learn so many new languages with the pressure of pleasing someone who is paying to put the food on your table and the roof over your head. How did you deal with learning and getting ready to deal with the stack you were about to work with and meeting clients' needs?
Yeah, so I think I've been quite fortunate in leadership in the places that I've worked and my bosses. So at the time when I was working at NICE, I had a boss called Ed Hiley, who he was very progressive, and he wanted to try new things and push the boundaries. And because you see that within leadership, and you see that it's not just about doing day-to-day tasks. Actually, if you can push the boundaries, you can learn a little bit more, and they lead by example. Then it encourages everyone that's working with them to start doing that as well. So I think he was probably the first person or the first boss that I had that really kind of pushed that it's not all about just completing day to day, and he'd say things like, if we can get this done, there's a potential for a project over here. It might not come off, but if we make a start and we have a look at it and, we see whether there is something there, I can take that to the director or whoever and we can discuss it. He made a few tech choices, and he'll not like me for saying this. I've forgotten what it was, but there was some terrible JavaScript framework that he said we should use, or something in Ruby, and I tried it. I went, it's absolutely rubbish. And there is a bit of trying out languages and being a little bit like a magpie and seeing what the next shiny thing is and moving around to it. But a little bit of trial and error, and you kind of end up with a good outcome in the end. You should never really just pick languages because you want to play with them.
Yeah.
You do need to look at the team that's there. As a contractor, there's permanent staff there. And, if you're introducing a new language or technology, you need to make sure that they're bought into it. They're going to work alongside it. They're going to be there to support it once you're gone, and happy to do that. You don't want to be that guy that walks in and goes, right, I've just written this really obscure thing in a language that you've never heard of, bye.
Yeah.
It's not going to wash. So, and no matter how much documentation you write, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, you know, you need to be involved with them. You need to be integrated with them. And that kind of helps as well. So what would normally happen is I would look at what languages they were already using. And if they were using something, I would try and match my skills to that and learn what they're doing. Because then it's frictionless when I exit as well.
So I've had a failed attempt back when I was like 23 at getting into McCann's as a marketing exec on their apprenticeship scheme. But I got to see their lovely offices. McCann is a very cool sort of hip company where they do cool stuff. And then NHS, I'm assuming they're a lot more formal. What was it like winning those contracts, and what were the differences in those two?
So actually, the McCann contracts and the NHS digital one, I actually did those consecutively. I did 2 days on one and 3 days on another. Yeah, I look back at that now and think, how on earth did I do that?
Yeah.
But it's just that variety that we were kind of talking about before, making sure that I've got that excitement to do things. And like you say, they're very different organisations. Fortunately, the chap that I was talking about before, Ed Hiley from NICE, he'd moved to NHS Digital, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go and work for NHS or with NHS Digital as a contractor on an exciting project that was, something that I could see real merit in, and it was actually doing some good in the world. It wasn't just designing a website for a betting site or something like that. It was more about doing a little bit of good. And I always kind of do think that you kind of need to balance the things you work on. Yes, you can work for finance organizations and stack up some points on this shoulder, but also if you're kind of saving lives and working on risk algorithms or systems where potentially vaccines can be distributed evenly, there's some points that go on this side. So as long as you're kind of balancing, I think that kind of makes things okay.
Yeah.
When it comes to formal structure, I think they were probably both the same. I was brought into McCann to do a particular job. It was a particular skill that I had that they couldn't bring in. It was to actually write a Cordova plugin for a mobile app on iOS and Android, which is something that I'd done quite a lot of and open sourced quite a lot during sort of downtime.
Yeah.
So did they come across me just by Googling and seeing my my GitHub profile and approached me. I met them for a coffee and I said, yeah, I can definitely do that. Yeah. So I was doing a very specific job there, and it was going in, sitting down, doing exactly what it was that was clearly mapped out. So there wasn't really as much interaction and integration with everybody else. Whereas at NHS Digital, you might think it's more formal. It wasn't. It was more collaborative. They were starting to move into, proper agile ways of working with a multidisciplinary team. It wasn't quite to GDS standards and things like that at that point. It was slightly different, but it was the same kind of principles. So, in fact, it might be a little bit different to other people's experiences, the experiences that I had between those two organisations.
And then, so after NHS Digital, and because you moved back into normal work, did you, or have you always been in contracting? What happened after those two?
No, so I stayed contracting, and then I moved into my first proper startup, which was actually, I did another contract in between there, but yeah, then moved into my first proper startup, which was Prescience, which was a smart home, smart energy, unified hardware device to sit in the home. And I look back at it now and think we were 10 years too early on this thing. So, the proper kind of startup problem of designing something which is, or you think is fantastic, but you just can't sell it into the market. Yeah. We did manage to sell it into the market, but it's only still, even now, just slowly dripping into the market.
I want to know about you're obviously entrepreneurial if you wanted to start a startup. Did you start this startup on your own?
No. So this startup was with four other people effectively, and I was the very kind of junior one, the youngest by a long way. Yeah. We all put cold hard cash into the business. I won't say how much, but I had the sort of lowest shareholding as well. And it was a great opportunity to build a device that would work with UK smart meters. So I don't know how much you know about UK smart energy. You probably got a smart meter stuck.
I've just had one now, and it's ruined my life because all I can do is look at it and pay attention to my fuel and how I can change my heating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's such a dumb thing because it kind of just sits there, but it doesn't do anything. It's informing you, but then what do you do with that information, like
Yeah.
you say? So I designed a device that integrated with the actual smart meter itself, that
Hmm.
had a screen the same, but also connected to the internet, and also had the ability to control smart home devices. So it could adjust your heating, it could turn your lighting off, and do various other things at pretty much the same price point as the dumb little thing that all the energy companies were handing out. So yeah, we got investment from a $1 billion Taiwanese company to manufacture the device as well.
Yeah.
So that was quite exciting in itself. And we effectively managed to get this product completed and yeah, a customer ordered. So we sold to a big UK big six utility provider, and since then they sold to someone in Italy and rolling it out there. And there were so many kind of firsts that we did, and I was just accelerating all the time. I went to a Barclays hackathon at Rise, if you remember, on Deansgate,
Yeah.
and went there and did a top up to a smart meter via voice, not using an Alexa Echo device. I built the Alexa into the device that I'd already, shipped. So the
Whoa.
little screen actually spoke to you. This is before Echo shows and
That's
everything like that.
huge. Yeah.
So I stood on stage and did a proper live meter top up of £10 and said, stick 10 quid on Lecky. And it actually worked. So we actually won that, which is probably not surprising when I look back on it now. And we did loads of other firsts. So obviously Amazon got interested in that. Amazon flew me out to somewhere in Europe. I think it was Berlin.
You're brushing past so many big
about,
things. Like Amazon just flew me out, and
yeah,
these are huge steps.
Sorry. It was a whirlwind, and it was crazy. And I was working very hard. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I was working 7 days a week.
Oh,
not sustainable kind of levels, but enjoying every minute of it and just soaking it up and taking as much in as I could.
yeah.
But then I reached a point where, and I guess this goes back to the point I made at the start of, I had a product. If I want a version 2 of that product, that's a lot more investment, and that is not going to happen anytime soon. The company wants to sell this product that is now made and ready to go. And there's not going to be any R&D money. There's not going to be anything else on the back of it. So I've kind of reached that point of, again, this product's done.
You got
what do I do now?
bored.
So that's when I realised, it's kind of
You're
time
so
to leave.
brave. That's so brave. The fact that you get bored, and then that you have the instinct to listen to that and then act on it, I think that's really brave. Do you not have that fear though? So obviously, I'm 31 now. I've worked in a few roles where I felt that frustration. I've only recently become a software developer though, so it's quite new to me. But the thought of moving on, now that I've got a skill, because I never had a skill before, now I've got a skill, the thought of moving on, I love North Coders, just to clarify, I'm not going to leave North Coders yet, but the thought of moving on, and I imagine this would be for a lot of people, terrifies me, because what if I don't know? But do you not have that fear, or is that just, do you just disconnect? Are you like that free soloist, just no fear whatsoever?
I think because I've been so lucky and I've not had that huge, knockback, I'm kind of thinking, well, it'll never happen.
Yeah.
So thanks for just making me think about that, because now I'm worried about the next step.
Okay, you'll be fine.
No, I've always kind of been well reasoned in my choices for leaving. I know we're talking very quickly at pace here, and it looks like I'm making decisions 100 times a day. That wasn't the case. It would take a couple of weeks for me to kind of say, actually, you know what, I want to start looking for other things. What are the other opportunities? So yeah, we're talking very fast pace here, but in reality, there was a lot more consideration and time that passed between things.
Yeah. So you started this. You've been involved with this startup, which sounds incredible. That sounds like the dream, the way it's worked out. You've had involvement with Amazon, huge investment. That's for me, for somebody like me, that's a dream, because I think every aspect of that, from working with the tech to developing this business, is just so cool. And you must have felt on top of the world come the end of it, surely.
I'm not sure I did. I actually said to myself, right, I'm not doing another startup at the end of it, because yeah, I mean, it's great and I achieved loads, but it was hard work. This isn't something that was sustainable. I think I did 54 flights in one of the years. That was a 3-year startup, and it was a huge amount of travel and making sure that things were done right. And a huge amount of pressure. So I kind of needed to take a bit of a step back after that and think, you know what, I need to do something where I've got the variety of projects that a startup gives, but actually a little bit more job security effectively, which is what you're alluding to before.
Yep.
And I want to work with the same team. You know, I want to be able to go for a beer after work or whatever it might be with the same kind of people, not that kind of contracting, moving around model. So I had an opportunity to go work for a company called BGSS, which you may or may not have heard of, as a chief engineer, which was absolutely fantastic. I love that job. I did it for 2 years, only just recently left. And you might not understand what a chief engineer does. Not many people do.
Yep.
But it's effectively making sure that I was delivering, or the company were delivering, the right solutions for their customers.
Okay.
Which, yeah, on the face of it sounds quite simple, but when there's a lot of projects in flight, and you know, a lot of people, quite a difficult thing to kind of keep on top of. And I took great pride in making sure that we were delivering the right things, and always thinking, I hate saying the word outside of the box, but using all of the skills and things that I'd learned in my past to make sure that we were coming up with something a bit unique and innovative. And the fact that when you're applying for a bid, whether it's public sector or private sector, you want to stand out. You want to suggest something that's maybe a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
And, you know, I did have a little bit of reputation for coming up with things that were a little bit, let's just say, unique.
Yes.
Cool. on occasion. But, you know, they did win work. We didn't always implement them, but it made us stand out as, you know, progressive and forward thinking, and absolutely loved that aspect of the role.
I've got two questions. The first one goes back a little bit more, and it probably would seem off topic, but I wish we spoke more about these things. You mentioned you were going on 57 flights and you were so busy. I'm assuming you were married to your partner at that time.
Yes.
Yeah. How did you manage a relationship and being so busy with work at the same time? Surely that must have been hard.
Yeah, I mean, it was. My wife is very driven as well, and she likes to work hard. And it's not like we didn't chat. We know what it's like now in COVID land where we live, and everything is kind of remote. Yeah. Jumping on a video call and things is easy, and we would do that then anyway. Yeah. And a lot of these trips were short trips, so that number of flights, 54, I think it was. I actually can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah. There were, you know, short flights and day trips and things like that. So if I was going to Berlin, for example, it'd be a day trip. So my wife would probably just not really even realize where I'd been. Sometimes it would be a case of I'd left early and I'd come home late. But, you know, that often happened when I was working in Manchester anyway. Yeah, so yeah, it wasn't that I was away for extended periods of time. I think Taiwan sometimes was a couple of weeks, but yeah, we worked around that, and it wasn't all the time. That
it's pretty cool though, being able to sustain a relationship and be so hard, work so hard. I think that's, from my experience of asking people these sort of questions, there's always a struggle at that point where you're so busy and stressed with work. I don't know.
I think if you're both happy and doing the things that you want to do, then it kind of all naturally works its way out. It's not like you're kind of having to force anything. If you're both excited about work and you do spend the time together, and when I do fly home or we've got stuff in the evenings, you know, we do switch stuff off. We'll go on date nights, we'll watch films, and we'll just sit and chill and watch Netflix sometimes as well, you know.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Lee. You're very fortunate. Yeah, very beautiful.
Exactly.
Truly beautiful. Okay, so back to what we were talking about. So you're a chief engineer. You're talking about being involved with numerous projects and having to make decisions to ensure that they were the right solutions for customers' needs, and also you were coming up with random ideas. What sort of decision? Because I'm assuming it's really high level. So you're not choosing tech stacks. You're looking at the product itself and the features of that product and how it applies. Is that what you're doing in that role?
Well, I mean, it varied from project to project.
Okay.
Some projects I would be hands-on. I would literally be, jumping in and coding and helping out. And that was always kind of my style, is I'm there to help. If you've got a problem, don't just sit on it. Come talk to me about it, and I'll come try and help. I'll try not to make it worse. But at least, you know, if I can't help, I'll find somebody else that could come in and help. And got into a great relationship with everybody where they would, rather than me have to go check on projects, they would kind of come along and say, they've got a problem with this, or is there anything that we can do about this, or this isn't smelling right, or this isn't right. And it got a lot easier, because initially it was more a case of asking the engineers if they were happy on the project, if there was anything I can do to help, if there was if they were proud of the work that they were doing, in fact, and just making sure that they were all in a good place and the projects were kind of in a happy place. But then as sort of time progressed, it became kind of the reverse, and they would come and tell me sort of proactively, which actually meant that I could look after more projects and kind of expand the number of things that I was looking at and working on.
That's an achievement as someone who's leading a team of numerous teams. That is an achievement when you've got them to come to you. Do you think that's your personality that's done that? I can tell already that it's just something that's come naturally. But how have you achieved it?
I honestly think the reason why that happens is because I'm not that kind of manager that doesn't understand code, for example. Yeah. And I can understand. I really understand the problems, and I can go in and help them. Because I have that, background. I'm not that sort of project manager that's a technical project manager that's never written a kind of line of code in his life. Yeah. I think that helps, and the fact that I would work on projects. In fact, I would bill out my time to customers on projects as well, and actively work on engagements that needed me to work on them. So I think people seeing that and seeing me work alongside them made them think, actually, you know what, this is someone that I respect and want to work with. And likewise, the people that wanted to work with me, I wanted to help them more as well. So cool. I would go out of my way to make sure that, everybody was in the right place, and it worked both ways, and had a great relationship.
So you were on the front lines with them, and that helped you, which is awesome. And I can see how, if you can speak their language, they would go to you. So you're a chief engineer, you can get on, people are coming up to you. What are you like when things go wrong? Because I think this is one of the reasons why all companies fail, or projects fail, or something along those lines. It's because of fear, and people. Obviously, it depends on how you can see things as well. But I noticed that staff and leaders are treated differently. Conversations are different. Staff are afraid of leaders, and they don't hide the truth because they're not liars, but they just, I can't explain it. They're not as honest and straight to the point when it comes to management. Whereas for you, obviously, in that position, I'm assuming they were coming to you and they were treating you like family, which is how a business should be. Everyone's honest and open. So how did you get to that?
I know what you're saying there. It is difficult to articulate. I think that organizations kind of historically, I don't know whether it's kind of the management or leadership layer of kind of wanted to make sure that they knew a little bit more than the people below them. I'm not really sure kind of how that mindset works, but I'm pretty sure that kind of filtering has a number of different kind of reasons, or they don't want to distract the engineers with things that maybe they don't need to know. So what they would do is they'd sit as a sort of piggy in the middle kind of Chinese whispers layer between the customer and the engineers themselves, whereas actually it's not the right way to do it. Everybody needs to be involved in that conversation. There's no miscommunication, there's no misinterpretation. If you do become that kind of manager where you're not relaying all of the information, or you're relaying information late, you won't have the respect of the team, because that will very quickly surface. and people will start asking why, and people will start asking and saying, well, why did I get brought into this project 6 weeks after it started and I didn't get any input in the start?
Yes.
All of those kinds of things. You just need to make sure that just never happens. You have everybody involved in the conversations. If a customer wants to speak to an engineer, they should be able to speak to that engineer. I know delivery managers and people will say, oh, engineer time, we need to protect them from the customer. But often a quick conversation with an engineer can speed things up. Yeah. And I mean, that's an ideal world. It doesn't always work out like that. Different engineers operate in different ways. Some engineers, are better at that, speaking directly to the customer, than others. But if you're a group and you have a group of engineers together, there will be a natural kind of engineer lead within that that's capable of making sure that they can speak to the customer and everybody's involved in it. So I'm not really sure it answers your question, because I think it's a tricky one.
Yeah, it is a tricky one. Do you not think that? So all the points you made there, I agree with completely. I also think the fear is what I mentioned there with going to seniors and so on. What were you like when things went wrong? Because things must have gone wrong, surely.
Oh yeah, a lot.
Okay. So things went wrong. How was your response to them? Because for them to go to you when things weren't working right, that suggests that they're not afraid, and it's great. It means they're amazing talent as well, because they're concentrating on the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
But what were you like when things went wrong? Because you must be approachable. You can tell you're lovely, but how were you in work?
I won't go as far as lovely, but approachable. We'll go with that. I think it depended on the problems. I mean, there were big problems and there were small problems, and there are some things that snuck up on me that I didn't know about. And there's never a perfect kind of problem that kind of came along. They were all different in different ways. There are some big projects that I was involved with where we had huge amounts of downtime and issues like that. And they are stressful times for the team, stressful times for my bosses as well. And people want to know updates. Fortunately, the company that I was working in, everybody's kind of trusted to get on with it and do the best and ask for help. And anybody would help anybody else out. So one of my sort of key strengths in that area was making sure that we just had the right people on it, whether that was me, whether that was somebody from another project, and getting everybody to muck in and help on whatever that thing was. And then once it's fixed, obviously celebrate the fact that we've managed to get out of that. I'm not one for celebrating things that, shouldn't be celebrated. I've seen people, get close to finishing sprints in the past and been 3-story points off and patting each other on the back. For me, that shouldn't be celebrated. If you've smashed the sprint, that's a celebration. Fixing something which is, down, it's got, potential repercussions as well for SLAs and things like that. But overcoming it in a way that you're kind of proud of and the way that it was handled, then that definitely should be celebrated. I think doing that and seeing that and getting people wanting to be involved in things when they're broken and help everybody out, but doing it in a structured way with the right people at the right time is kind of the most effective way of doing it. I was very fortunate at BGSS because there's a lot of very smart people that really want to help all the time. So you kind of got a pool of people that I understand their skill sets and can kind of just say, can you do me a favor? Do you want to have a look on it? And sometimes they'll even already know about the thing because somebody will have spoken to them about them. And that's absolutely fine as well. That communication amongst teams is one of the key strengths of BGSS where I used to work.
Another thing for someone to be at the top, I think you get some managers who don't want to get involved with the nitty gritty or the stuff that you get when you're not, because chief engineer is the top. So when you're working on projects and you're there on the front lines, you have to get involved with things that you wouldn't want to normally get involved with. How do you deal with those as someone who has, because your brain needs to be saved for bigger picture thinking. You can't get pulled into the bottom. You can tell you're clever, but how do you deal with that?
Chief engineer role is a tricky one. You do need to be able to multitask. When we moved into 100% remote working, I actually probably went a little bit too extreme on that and started context switching between projects and zooming into meetings in different offices just because I could, and I wanted to maximize the amount of things I could do. Then I started to realize, when you run into the gents between meetings and and things like that, then maybe this isn't a sustainable way of working. You need to be a little bit more careful with your prioritization, which is kind of the answer to your question there. You need to understand what the priorities are, your priorities, team's priorities, business priorities, and weigh those up. And sometimes you kind of have to say no to people. But, with good reason. It's not because you're lazy and you're going for a 3-hour lunch or something. It's because there are more important things, and that person will ultimately understand. And you kind of hope that next time you say no to that person, it's not the very next time, and you're not saying it consecutive times, which probably does come into the prioritization as well.
Yeah, I bet. That's super cool. So what are you doing now? You said you left BJSS.
Yeah, so the last bit of BGSS was I actually became the lead of all the chief engineers. So every single office has a chief engineer. So sort of my last 9 months or so, I was kind of showing them the things that worked for me in Nottingham, where I was the chief engineer, and showing them some of the things that I did that didn't work, and kind of letting them learn from it, and kind of showing that knowledge and that experience that I'd gained, and let them do what they want with that, and then run their offices in their own ways. So that was a kind of really nice way to end and say, look, I've done these things. This is what worked for me. This is what didn't. And it felt like a nice kind of parting way. And yeah, absolutely great company. I absolutely loved every single project, every single person that I worked with, I think pretty much, maybe one or two. But I came to a point when, right, what's next? What's next on the agenda.
Yeah.
So weighing up everything that I'd done in the past, I realized the things that I like is working with the same team. So whatever I do, I want that, core team around me. I don't want to go out contracting. What I don't want is I don't want that layer of management that we were talking about. And I don't want to be that layer of management either. So I want a kind of engineer-friendly group of people to work with, which are consistent. But I also want to work on fun and exciting projects. And I want those to change every sort of 4 weeks or 3 months or whatever it might be. So the only real way that I could do that was by starting my own consultancy. So I kind of got to the experience point where I've got contacts in various different departments of government, at various different private sector organizations, have a great network of engineers that I've worked with over the years, and decided the best thing that I want to do now is create an engineer-led consultancy. And that's where we don't have, some of the multidisciplinary skills that you might expect in some large projects, where you've got potentially a business analyst and a service designer and a UXer. What I'm actually doing is I'm looking at engineers that have other skills as well. So if you're an engineer that can do UX, or if you're an engineer that can do, you could be a Scrum Master, or you could do something else. Everybody has that kind of base coding knowledge to be able to talk to each other on the same level and muck in, but actually have the other skills that's required to run a successful project. So ambitious plans. I don't know how this story ends yet, because this is where we are today. We were in discussions with our first customer this morning about our first engagement. So this is very fresh off the press. But over the next sort of 6 months or so, we'll see how this works out. And I'm excited to kind of work with some great people that I've worked with in the past, but also some new people as well that want to work in this kind of way of working.
So you haven't found, have you found all the talent yet? How many people have you got working with you, or are you still?
So we're super young. I think we're 4 or 5 weeks old as a company.
Wow.
So there's 3 of us, which are the founders. We're called San Digital. San means 3 in Chinese.
Cool.
Obviously spent a lot of time in Taiwan, so that kind of filtered in a little bit. So there's San Digital, and we all have our networks of people that we trust and have worked with in the past, but we've not started to go out to the market yet until we start getting our first wave of engagements through. And as soon as that happens, you don't need to know us to be able to apply at all. It's a case of if you think this is how you want to work, come talk to us, and we'll explain a little bit more about how we want to engage with customers, how we'll run projects, and it'll be a little bit different to everywhere else. So there's that element of risk that we talked about before. Where we're going to be a very different company. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I think you've discovered the future of teams to work on projects in this industry. There, hands down. I think it sounds so exciting. As I would describe myself as a jack of all trades, definitely not a master of any, but absolutely a jack of all trades. And the idea of having a variety of clients and projects, a variety of roles on those projects, it's hard to find a job. I'm lucky at North Coders because on internal projects I've had the opportunity to be like that, but it's hard to find companies and agencies that do that. And I think that that's the products that you're going to build, if you've got a talent of talented people, are going to be hot. There's no other. They're going to be amazing. But
I really hope so. I mean, I've seen it. There's the big, large consultancies. I won't name any, not ones that I've worked for, but they kind of pick up these sort of low value contracts, these 10 weeks pieces of work, and they don't really deliver anything. And when they're pitching for the work, they've not got the best people on it. They've got people that maybe haven't even touched a text editor, and they're not really delivering that value for money. And I've seen that there's so many of these sort of low-end engagements where real value could be delivered, especially in the public sector, where if we can go in and we can put, the teams that normally work on, or the caliber of engineers that normally work on the top flight projects on these smaller things, but do them quickly, efficiently, then, it's going to be win-win for everybody.
Yep. I said this before, you're hiring a company of unicorns. That's what you're doing here.
Well, no. So when I say, you need to be a great engineer, It could be that you were previously a BA and you've started to understand how to write C Sharp, write JavaScript, write Python, or you've got a background in data or QA, or you're wanting to start look at data science, or you're wanting to look at data engineering. And it's that multidisciplinary skill that you've kind of got, more than one thing about yourself, that means that in a team you can be more effective. That's what it is. You don't need to be a unicorn. You don't need to be the best engineer ever. I'm not anywhere near the best engineer. I'm doing Advent of Code at the moment. I'm halfway down the leaderboard. So, I'm definitely not the top flight engineer.
Yeah.
It's about wanting to work in this kind of way, and wanting to further yourself and further your skills.
How are you going to manage all of these different personalities though? Because that must be something, surely you've had to do it yourself. You're capable of a lot of things by the sounds of it. I think that having lots of skills is awesome because it means you can get thrown onto all sorts of things, but it's really hard to concentrate and focus, for me anyway. So how I really want to know how you do that in your career, because by the sounds of it, you've got a similar personality, but also how are you going to manage a group of people that are all going to be this like chaotic bundle of talent?
So it comes down to the interview process, that we were talking about before, and that kind of two-way street. And I often think to myself, could I go out after work with this person and have a coffee or have a beer, and could we chat about stuff? And how would I work with this person, and how would other people in the team work with this person? And do I think that they would enjoy it? If I think that they don't, then I'd maybe tell them and explain, this is how we work. Do you think this is a good fit for you? And it comes down to that stage. Also, if somebody's not enjoying a project, I would actively try and help them find a new role, or incentivize them to leave if they're not happy. Which is, some companies have done crazy things like saying after your first 3 months, if you don't enjoy it, we'll give you £1,000 to leave and things like that. Maybe not quite that extreme, but it is that kind of, you want people to want to work in these teams.
Yep.
When it comes down to the teams themselves, yes, they're going to be a little bit self-organizing. I'll be on a team myself, doing various different bits and pieces. And the way that we construct those teams will be based on, did you enjoy working with that person? Did that work? Are your skills too similar? Are we missing something? Do we need another person in there? And we'll be looking at that and discussing it with the client, and it will get written into the proposals. And we'll be saying, look, this is the team that you're going to get. These are the people. These are the skills. If it's not working, we can change these things. This is the things that we can do. But with that proven velocity, and if we can keep teams together that like working together, then that's also pretty good. It is a tricky thing to kind of sell, with my salesman hat on.
Yep.
And saying, oh, by the way, no, you don't have a full-time tester on the project. You don't have a full-time delivery manager. This is your escalation. This is how things work. This is how you approach me or one of the other directors if there's a problem. It's a different way of working for the customers as well. But when they see the potential outputs and the lower cost, they think, actually, you know what? It might be worth giving this a try and seeing what it's like. I'm not saying I've got all the answers, and there will definitely be problems along the way, but that's what's fun and exciting, right?
Yeah.
And anybody that also has that like-minded, I want to come and do these kind of fun things, then, they'll be up for it as well. And they'll appreciate we're going to get some stuff wrong, but they'll be there helping us fix them.
I can't remember who said it, but there's one quote that says starting a company is like staring death in the face, something along those lines. And I feel like that's sort of relatable here. Super cool. So your career is amazing. I have no idea what to write for your bio, because there's so many things I could put for the bio when we release this. But what advice have you got for? You originally wanted to talk about continuous learning, didn't you? You mentioned you're doing Advent of Code, sorry. Which means that you can still code, which I'd find hard for you to forget, really, after working so much in the industry. How do you keep learning? How do you stay on top of technologies and so on?
I mean, it's things like that. So, little coding challenges at 5 a.m., keeping your brain fresh. I think I've done probably Python, JavaScript, Rust, and did one in Swift so far. That's just the only reason why I did one in Swift is it looks like our first engagement's going to be Swift. I needed to brush up a little bit. So it's just about keeping things fresh, doing fun things. So fun little coding challenges is the perfect way to do it. There's also, learning that you can do. A lot of people have a mindset of they don't have time to learn, or I'm very task oriented. I've got my day job. I don't want to do anything outside of that. We're in a world now where people are potentially saving traveling time, and yes, they might be spending more time with their families, but there is an opportunity to do a little bit more learning within their remits. But to be honest, if you really have an appetite to do something, go speak to your boss about it. Go say, we should try and introduce some kind of continuous learning culture. And I'm not just talking about lunch and learns and things. I'm talking about some active kind of, let's teach each other, let's up each other's skills as an organization so that we can build better products or offer better services, and try and get the leadership bought into that. And then you can kind of move along on that journey as an individual and an organization.
So your advice there is to still jump into small challenges, not building little projects. How would you? I've not been coding for the last few months, and the hunger's been there, so I want to. So I've started again. But it's a stupid thing to do, because I only finished the course last year, and I've had a year of not doing it. I've working on projects, and then I've stopped for a bit. Now I feel rusty, and I'm terrified, riddled with imposter syndrome and so on. But how are you? What sort of projects do you work on to keep yourself in that zone? Did you say just little catters, or do you build small apps?
But also, so mobile apps.
Yep.
If I've got a good idea for something, I've built loads. I mean, none of them are successful, but that's kind of not the point of it, right? I mean, I built a diabetes risk checker app once. I built something called Sprint Social, which was an app where you ran with your phone for 100 meters, and then you sent it to all your friends, and they tried to beat you. And like silly little things like that that are quite technically challenging. Like, how do you keep the phone timing and the GPS running and using the co-motion processor with an iPhone when the screen's off? That's a technical challenge in itself. So all of these little things, just kind of come up with little problems or little things that you think people might be interested in. Most of the time they're not. And most of the time you'll stick them on the App Store and you'll be really disappointed. And that's just the way it is. But guess what? You learned some stuff in there. And you even though you won't admit it straight away, you did have some fun writing it.
Where do you get the time to write these little projects, though? How do you find that time? Because you have a family. You have a family at work as well, and then you're finding time to build these projects. Have the idea. You've got the brain space to come up with these project ideas as well. That's incredible.
Yeah, again, so we're talking at speed here. We're covering kind of 15 years in 50 minutes or whatever. I know. So, there's probably 20 probably. So obviously there's gaps between engagements, and when I'm working on one contract, I might have had a 4-week gap between a couple of contracts. So I'd do some open source stuff. I'd contribute to other people's things. I'd release my own open source packages while I'm waiting for, interviews to come around and that kind of stuff. So it's not like I was doing 10 things all at once, all piled on top of each other.
Yeah.
It might sound like that in this interview, but it's not quite that manic.
Sweet. Have you got any advice for anyone who's looking to have a career as illustrious as yours?
Well, I mean, I don't really rate my career that highly.
Are you serious? How are you so modest? It's amazing.
I think it's about having fun. To your point before, just go stare death in the face. Yeah. Once you see it, you realize it's not really that scary. Yeah. And the potential, fun that can come out of it and excitement far outweighs any of the risk. Just take each day as it comes, and be very grounded in things, and say, you know what, I might have this problem today, and it's winding me down, but guess what? It probably won't be there tomorrow. I'll have probably sorted this out in three days' time, or whatever it might be, and have that kind of belief to work through those problems and know there will be that light at the end of the tunnel. It works, and you just keep pushing yourself and pushing forwards. And yeah, there will be knockbacks, and I'm talking about every single failed app that I ever built there. Unfortunately, that was a successful one to talk to you about. But don't be afraid of learning and failing and learning from it. So,
do you ever actually experience fear though? I know we're rushing over it, but do you ever experience fear or resistance to going ahead? Or are you the type of person that doesn't experience that?
I get nervous, of course, and even a little bit before this interview, a little bit nervous. And if you look at some of the sort of hackathons and stuff where I've gone up on stage, might have been due to lack of sleep and stuff, but my voice is shaking a little bit, and I am apprehensive, and that's healthy. Having that kind of nervousness and adrenaline means that you want to do your best job, and it kind of helps you a little bit along that way. So there's definitely, I don't have a switch of a brain where I can just go, no, don't worry about that thing, you'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Don't think I have that. I've not invented that. So yeah, I do get afraid of things. But I know and I believe that after that, there will be something else that is successful at some point. And we can just gloss over all of those little failures at some point, like in an interview like this.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we've covered quite a lot there. I wasn't quite expecting to go through my entire work history, but I don't think I've ever done that before. So it's an exclusive for you.
I think it's ridiculous that you've not, because not only have you worked in so many places and had so many. So you've done startups, you've done contracting, you've worked for companies, and now you're starting a consultancy on your own. So you've got all of these experiences, but it sounds like you've done them really well. As if you're saying that engineers are going to you as a chief engineer. That means that you're on the same level as them mentally, and that is how you, in my opinions, I mean, I know nothing, I've not achieved anything yet, but in my opinion, that's how you build a project that's great. Everyone's open and honest, and you can see all the problems as they're coming, and you've obviously had the personality and the snouts and the ability to just achieve those things. That's amazing. That is truly the dream.
Thanks. I think personality there that you said, that's the key. I mean, you've got great personality. If you want to work with people, you're open to new ideas. That's the secret sauce, I think.
Cool. I don't want to take any more of your time because I'm assuming you're busy. But thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much, Lee.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate. See ya. Bye.
Yeah.